if you happen to have them, it might help. But anyway, I don't hear an echo yet. So we're live.
I'm muting myself.
Okay. Oh, okay. You can. It's a good idea. It's a good etiquette to mute yourself when you're not talking. That's fine. But you're welcome to. We're going to ask you to introduce yourself again in a minute. So be ready to unmute. I'm Vance Stevens. I'm in Al Ain, United Arab Emirates. This is the 16th of August, 2015, and we're in Learning Together, which is something we try to do every week on Sundays, usually on Sundays. Sherry Schaefer is here for the first time. She's in Los Angeles, California. And
hi.
Yeah, hi. Phil Hubbard is joining us.
Hello.
Yes, that's Phil from Stanford, Palo Alto, California, in that area. And Magdalena, would you like to tell us why you're here?
I'm from Poland, from Bielsko-Biała. I'm a teacher of English as a foreign language. I'm a teacher trainer, and I'm really interested in whatever you're doing and whatever is related to teaching English. So.
Okay, we are getting a little bit of an echo. But you're muting. No, I think the echo might be coming from somewhere else because it was you talking. The echo was coming back, so maybe it could be Phil. I don't know.
So I'm muting myself again.
Okay, Sherry's got earbuds. All right.
Yes. Got earbuds.
It's pretty insignificant. I don't think we need to worry about it too much. Okay, so anyway, what we're talking about today, first of all, let me direct you to the other chat that we're using. If we can use the chat wing, and I'll just see if I'll stick that in the... This is where I'd like to be chatting. This is because we're streaming live. We're streaming live on webheadsinAction.org/live, and on that page, webheadsinAction.org/live, there's a chat box there. And if we use that, then people can see us as we talk to one another. If we talk here in the Hangout, then no one outside, no one in the stream can see us. So in case people pop by in the stream, and I've just got to revive my other computer because that's where I monitor these chats. So give me a second here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I don't bring this up if I don't bring it up on a separate computer, then I can't monitor it. Okay, so anyway, let's tell you what we're doing here today. Phil and I, some time ago, maybe not quite last century, but anyway, early this century, we were...
Oh, no, it was last century.
It was last century, that's true.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, we worked on something called Traci Talk together, and Sherry became interested in it for some reason. Well, maybe Sherry, you could tell us how you came
Yeah, so I became interested in it when I was a graduate student at UC Davis, and I was interested mainly in pronunciation. I wanted to find software that helped students develop their pronunciation skills, and that's especially relevant for international graduate students who need more practice with their speaking, and they're doing a lot of lecturing, and sometimes students complain that their pronunciation isn't comprehensible sometimes, and so I was trying to find software that would help those international graduate students improve their pronunciation. And I looked at a bunch of software, and a lot of them seemed very boring and focused on specific sounds, like just the segmentals of English, the vowels, the consonants. And I read some research on that, on pronunciation, and I don't think that's enough. I think it can help a bit, but I think it's intonation mainly that is what's important. So I was thinking, okay, maybe if I find some software that incorporates rhythm of English, intonation, that would help. But anyways, I stumbled upon Traci Talk during this process of finding a good software, and so Vance and Phil mentioned to me that it wasn't intended to be a pronunciation program, but it does have an element of speech recognition. So there's the speech recognition software that's part of it. And I thought, well, that could help in some way. I think, if the program is able to recognize what students are saying, that would give them some feedback as to their pronunciation. So if their pronunciation is at a sufficient level, then the program would be able to recognize that and move on with the conversation. So, I like that element of feedback from the program. So I just was really interested in Traci Talk, and not just, for pronunciation purposes, but in general. And I contacted Phil and Vance about it, and they were very kind to, give me some answers and information about the program. And I got the program myself, played it a little bit, and I think it's a very interesting program. So it was. I mean, I'm sure Vance and Phil will talk about it more, but I thought it was very innovative, especially for its time, because I believe it came out in 1996. Is that right?
97.
Correct me if I'm 97.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the time, it was very innovative, incorporating speech recognition technology, and yeah, I'd love to hear more about it from Vance.
Maybe Phil, if
Mm-hmm.
I could just introduce into the audio record here something that the Abu Dhabi Women's College, they have it in their independent learning center there, and they have a description of it, which is really nice. And I put it in the chat wing. There's a more information on the topic. I copied this into the Learning2gether, so I'll just read it in so that people listening to this broadcast and anybody else will understand a little bit about what we're talking about. But this is the way they talk about Traci Talk, the mystery, how they pitch it to their students. It says, you are involved in a plot. In this program, you're asked to solve a mystery by taking a train to Coopervale and posing as a visiting professor at Coopervale University. The person who requested your help has arranged for you to meet one suspect on the train to Coopervale and for another to pick you up at the station in his cab. Does this sound familiar, Phil? You're taken to your apartment where your neighbor is a third suspect, and you meet a fourth at a dinner party, and so on. The plot thickens. As you meet each character, you have the opportunity for an extended conversation that can take many paths. You're able to talk to the characters using a microphone attached to the computer. In so doing, you're exposed to a large amount of natural and communicative English, which you hear, but can also see in text form if you wish. Many of the utterances are recycled in the program to reinforce learning. Learn English while solving the mystery. At the beginning of the program, there's a basic training session where you can practice, or you can start conversing with the characters directly. Repeating the conversations allows you to obtain additional information by following the many different paths. When you feel you know each of the characters, you can go to the next level by answering a series of 8 questions correctly, taken randomly from a pool of 60. If you pass this test, you can invite the subjects to your place for a chat and try to solve the mystery. And the conclusion is sophisticated, humorous, and satisfyingly rich in content. The storyline has been designed to appeal to adult learners and engage them in an interesting and fruitful language learning experience. Did you write that, Phil? Or
no, I didn't.
No, they just made it up themselves. Yeah, that's cool. That was a really nice description. So Phil was the architect of Traci Talk. He was the script writer. I kind of made the speech work and worked on the low-level programming skills, programming ends, making it come together on 2 different operating platforms with the real programmer, Sang. And so Phil, how did this come about?
Well, first of all, just to clarify your role a little bit more, I always considered us more to be collaborators on this, so I would bounce ideas off of Vance. He did a lot of editing, and that editing added not only content but also that little part on the humor. I think more of that came from you than from me. Anyway, so
you just don't know it. It's very subtle.
So the background on this, I had been working as a contract writer for Courseware Publishing International for several years, doing more straightforward CD-ROMs that we thought were still pretty good, but they had sort of the standard dialogue. You had a storyline, but the storyline was advanced slowly or exclusively, really, by the writer, and the student using it was just listening and repeating. The previous ones didn't use speech recognition. Somewhere around 1995, we started experimenting with speech recognition. IBM Voice Type had come out, and we were able to use that for free. IBM licensed it to us in order to get material out that could be used, and basically so that they could show people that it was something other than just a dictation program. Let's see. We did a CD-ROM. I wasn't as involved in this one on vocabulary, and that was sort of where we experimented with the speech recognition. And around this time, there were a couple of other programs out there that I used for inspiration on this. One was called Who is Oscar Lake? And it was a language learning adventure game where you were, again, trying to solve a mystery. It was all based on text. And then a much more sophisticated one, which was for the masses, by Broderbund, called In the First Degree, where you were solving a murder mystery, and in that one you had to go out and interview suspects. Both of those used branching dialogues, so that you would make selections of what to say. Particularly the In the First Degree was set up so that if you were too direct in your questioning, you would end up having the suspect that you were questioning turn hostile on you. And we didn't use hostility, but we did put a little bit of that here. So you have to play your role as a visiting professor. You have to get information without being too direct. The branching dialogue part we thought would add quite a bit more interest and variety. One of the hardest things in language learning is to get this balance between the necessary repetition for things to stick and maintaining student interest. With branching dialogues where you had 2 or 3 choices, usually 3, every time you had an interaction with the character, there were, I think at one time we calculated several 100,000 possible paths through the program. And by, if you ask, the difference between asking at the beginning, you can either comment, you're sitting across from a character that you know is one of the suspects, and you can either ask them what's the book that they're reading. I think you can say something like, that book looks interesting, just as a gambit to get a conversation started. Or you can ask them what time it is. And if you say, excuse me, do you have the time? That's going to take the dialogue in a different direction than it would if you said, that book looks interesting. So this is the part of it in terms of, I guess in terms of design for maintaining interest, motivation. Students did end up going through the same scene multiple times, but it wasn't, there would be a lot of overlap, but there would always be new stuff because they would branch in different directions. The questions they had to answer would give them a task to solve, so that they would have to not just randomly be chatting like you would with a chatbot, but be talking for a purpose. The speech recognition was, of course, really new at that time, and we originally conceived of this as a program that would get students to speak and get them to want to speak, because there would be consequences to what they said. Over time, especially as I used it with my students, it became a little clearer to me that it was more of a listening program. You had to understand what the character was saying in order to be able to come up with your response. but when you spoke, you were basically reading one of those 3 lines of the dialogue, and so you didn't have to process it very deeply. You still had to be able to pronounce it clearly enough for the program to recognize that you had said it, but Vance set the program appropriately, pretty flexibly, in order to be able to let a lot of accents come through. So if you said something that was close to what one of those was, even if you made a grammar mistake or something like that, you usually could keep the dialogue going. The one thing we wanted was to get people engaged and avoid frustration. And if they're constantly being told that they're not being understood, then they're going to give up.
Yeah, this is...
go ahead. Why don't you add something to that?
Yeah, it's discrete speech recognition as opposed to continuous, and it's the kind that when you engage a robot on a, say you're calling to place an order at Amazon, they say, which department do you want? And you say, oh, computers, and then the program knows that that's one of the things you're going to say. Then that's easy to recognize. Whereas, of course, if you're using dragon dictation or you're talking on your mobile phone and you're using the speech, that's continuous speech recognition, and that's been developed quite a lot. That wasn't so well developed when we were doing this kind of programming. So this program does not at all take what people say and put that onto the computer. What it's doing is it's looking for certain things that the person could, for example, in the case of what time is it, you could say what the time maybe, and the computer would recognize the words what and time and would then act appropriately. So that's kind of the flexibility, and part of my job also was to write grammars for the computer. For example, what do you want might have to be what do you want, I'd have to write that in so that the computer could recognize the word what'ya, that sort of thing. So there was a lot of that stuff as we tested it with people. But I think the program is encouraging because it does take people who don't really realize that they can be understood in English or have concerns about that, and allows them to talk to the program, and the program does something, often the right thing. So, but it's not really, it has no idea about their pronunciation. It's just taking the allophones as they come in and checking them against what it's got in its expected list of responses. And if it doesn't get one of those, it would say something like, sorry, I didn't catch that, or something like that. So the character we have lots of things that the character can ask you to repeat. Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell the speech recognition. And I just put into the chat wing a URL for something I wrote back in 2002, I think, about some of that kind of development. If you're interested, you can look there for more information. I'll put it. No, I can't easily paste it here. I'm two different computers, remember? Maybe I can put it here.
Yeah. Another innovation of this, I wanted to mention something that we've known is useful in language learning for a long time, but I rarely see in any computer material, and that is we allowed for one level of negotiation of meaning. So if you, as the participant, didn't understand what a character said, you could say, sorry, I didn't catch that, and then instead of the character repeating it, the character would actually paraphrase it. Either simplify it, shorten it, or in some cases expand it so that it was more comprehensible, following kind of the standard, SLA negotiation of meaning versions. It would have been nice to be able to keep that going to more depth, but even having one level made it different from just the other programs, including the ones we'd done before, where you can just keep clicking on repeat. And that was kind of fun to implement and see how students responded as well.
Yeah, another part of the program with quite a lot of depth was the kernel behind Traci, and that is Traci herself is teacher ranging across the computer interface. And what that is basically, Phil conceived that as a personal digital assistant that that at any time this recognition engine will recognize the word Traci. If you want, it's kind of like calling Siri. So if you call Siri, another part of the program comes on. So if you say Traci, then it will offer you some help of some kinds. There are also exercises that the students can do. I don't know if did your students ever use those, Phil? I would.
We did a little bit at the beginning. You mean the basic training?
Well, the basic training, and there were some, I think, some grammar exercises or some ways to extend some of the concepts, the things the students were having to repeat. I don't remember exactly. I didn't see it used that much, but maybe you remember.
I don't recall doing any of those. No.
Okay.
If they were there, I think the students were too anxious to get into working on it. One of the other things it did, because these are branching dialogues, at the end of each session, it would save the dialogue that the student had actually done and put it into a text file, and the student could then review the branches that they had taken, and also, of course, since this was listening based, to be able to see it in text so that they could have a much clearer idea of what it is that they'd done and if they'd picked up new words and so on. I don't know if this is going to show. I actually have a copy of it on screen on another computer here.
Oh, okay.
That's probably not going to work, huh?
All right. Oh, that's nice. No, we can see that. And let me just, I'm going to click on that. Now, if you want to see this, you have to click on Phil's icon. So what I've done is I've clicked on your icon. So in the recording, that will stay in the recording as you talk. Okay. And if anybody else wants to see that big, just click on Phil's icon and it will get big for you. Just remember that in order to see the other people, you got to click it off. So it's a
if you want to give me just a moment, I can try and see if I can get this to actually play.
Sure.
So if you want to talk for a moment while I'm setting this up, I have to swap headsets and see if I can get, because I need it to play out at speakers but go in through the microphone so that the speech recognition will work. So give me a moment here, and Vance, you could continue, or Sherry. Did you ever get a chance, Sherry, to work it with students or just on your own? So why don't you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so I think my students really liked the interactivity of it. Like, they liked being able to say something and have the character respond in a very natural way. I think it was frustrating for some students, the speech recognition software in particular. And I know the bar is supposed to be pretty low, but actually some students had some trouble getting the software to recognize them. And actually some students were reluctant to even try the program because they were worried that their pronunciation wouldn't be sufficient enough for the program to recognize them. So actually some students weren't too comfortable with that. And I think you kind of have to get used to the program because in natural conversation, like, you could just say something like as soon as the person that you're talking to is done. But with the program, you kind of have to wait a little bit and speak loud enough. So you just have to kind of get used to that, knowing how the computer wants you to respond. So I think it was a little frustrating.
What did you do in Europe?
Sorry?
He's talking to his coffee cup.
Oh.
He's probably talking to Traci Talk. He's trying to get that set up. So.
Okay.
Anyway, what's your context? I know one thing. You said you had to get a Windows 95.
Oh, right. So.
Use it. How many students? What are their age levels, or who are they? Who are the students?
Well, so my students are high intermediate international students. Many from Korea, some from Japan. A couple from Brazil, but not all of my students use the program. Just a few did, and that's because I only had like one Windows 95 computer. So it was just a few students, and it seems that when the program was able to recognize them, they wanted to continue. But if they had some stumbling blocks, then they would, not be as interested in continuing. But they could see the good aspects of it. They liked, like I said, they liked being able to interact with the character, speak into the computer. So they did like some aspects of it. One thing I want to mention is it seems like the program requires a lot for them to think about at the same time. So I think that might be one of the challenges of the program is, being able to think about the conversation holistically, and also think about, how to respond to each statement by the character. So I think there are a lot of aspects to think about. So if there was a way to kind of, focus on either just the conversation or just, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but seems
Yeah,
like
well, you catch a train somewhere in California, and you're sitting next to someone who is into medieval literature. So oh, Phil, I muted you because we're getting sounds from over there. So if you could just unmute yourself. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You got
Okay, I've unmuted myself.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yeah, Sherry was just talking about some of the difficulties that her students, some of the challenging aspects of I guess the sophistication of the conversation, which that is a layer that's actually, we wanted to make it interesting, but that could have for some students.
No, I think it was interesting. I think the story was interesting, but it's more like, I think it was mainly the speech recognition software that was frustrating for students, not the story.
Okay.
But they didn't play it for too long, so it's hard to say how interested. But I thought the story was very interesting.
Yeah. I guess if you're running it on a Windows 95 machine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. So go ahead.
Okay,
Yes.
good, because you're going to hear Ron here in a minute, and we'll see how this works. I did want to mention some things about the speech recognition. I don't know, I missed part of what you were saying probably, but Vance, did you mention the calibration?
Ah, that's right. No, I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, because this is old school, so there was a separate app basically that had you set your microphone to the optimal volume.
Yes.
Oh.
We used to have to say, this is how I speak to my computer. And of course, when we're speaking to our computer, we used bad language and went like that. So the way we normally spoke to our computer, but you're supposed to sit and get a grip on yourself and say, this is how I speak to my computer. Yeah, that was the calibration statement, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And the other thing is, students have to kind of be trained to not talk until it says listening.
Right.
Even teachers using it often make that mistake. Even I do it sometimes.
Yeah,
so I'm going to try and see if I can hold this up. And I'm going to swap sides here a little bit so that I can see both screens here on the side.
We can hear you just fine. Maybe if you bring your laptop forward, and then you could probably be out of the picture or whatever. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
How's that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So let me see if I can get this restarted. Yeah, that's not going to work for me, though.
Okay.
I need to see Traci's screen more than I do this one. So this is better.
Okay.
How's that?
Now that looks like Ron on the train.
That is Ron on the train. Okay, so this is right at the beginning. So this is the first scene. You've been put onto a train, you've been given a ticket, and you see the person sitting across from you, and you recognize that this is one of the suspects. So it's very hard. Unfortunately, I can't expand the screen at all.
That's okay. We can see it. And
Yeah, I know. I'm having trouble reading
you
it,
got a
but
phone
it'll
call.
probably get better when it's bright. So let's see what happens when I go to.
Yeah, the program starts with a phone call, and the phone call kind of comes, I need some help, you know, cuts off. And you just have the information that you are, if you want to accept this mission, you should go to the train station. Your ticket is there. You get on the train, and here you meet this guy, Ron, who's holding a book in his lap.
Okay. So let's see what happens if I can get the speech recognition and the interaction to work here. That book looks interesting.
This? Yes, it is. Are you a fan of the Middle Ages?
No, I'm still young.
Ha, very funny. By the way, my name's Ron Stewart.
Nice to meet you, Ron.
Nice to meet you, too.
Are you from around here? Are you from around here? It stopped. Are you from around here?
No, I grew up in Alaska.
Did you like it there?
It was okay when I was young, but it got boring after a while. Growing up,
Whoops, are you guys still seeing this?
Yes, Halima has just joined us. She she had unmuted
Okay.
her mic, so I muted her.
Could you say that again?
How long did you live in Alaska?
18 years. From the time I was born till I went away to college. I moved to Los Angeles when I finished high school. I did my undergraduate work at UCLA.
That's interesting.
Say, I have some fruit. Would you like an apple or a banana?
Sure, I'll take an apple.
Here you go.
Thanks.
Don't mention it. You know, I used to snack on junk food all the time. But I had a girlfriend last year who got me to eat healthy food instead.
Do you still see her?
No, we broke up after a few weeks.
Why was that?
Well, our interests weren't the same. She was a couple of years older.
Was that the only problem?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Was that the only problem?
Actually, the main problem was she was, well, unusual.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Do you miss junk food?
Not really. Once I got used to fresh fruit, I found I liked it better than potato chips and candy bars.
Traci? So you can see when you call Traci, one of the things that happens is the text, well, you may not be able to see it, but the text of what you just listened to shows up. You can also say, what's my task? And then this is a list of the questions you're supposed to be looking for. The answers to. There are other things over here you can do as well. Exit this area. Yeah. Okay. I think that's maybe enough for you to get the idea.
Yeah, that was a trip down memory lane. So I'd like to welcome Halima from Tashkent. She's, let's see, and Magdalena says, I can't see the screen very clearly. When 2 or 3 yellowish lines appear, are they questions? Yes.
Yes.
Those yellowish lines are actually things that you can say. So what the program does, and you're welcome to speak to us, Magdalena. The program, the character speaks, and then your choices, because it's discrete recognition. So the computer is just trying to determine which of those 4 things you said. It's listening for the 4 things at any moment. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's 2 things.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then it's also listening in case you say Traci. So when you say Traci, you've activated your personal digital assistant, and can you hear me okay, by the way? Is my volume all right?
Yes, your volume is perfect.
Okay, great. I'm just getting very few bars on my screen, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to get back to that comment, the next example had 3 options. And one was, do you take the train often? The other one was, so what exactly do you do, Ron? And the third one is a way to get out of this conversation. If you'll excuse me. So you're not supposed to just stop it. If you want to stop having the conversation with the character, you're supposed to find a way, a gambit to get out with. And again, each of those, sometimes 2 of the lines will take you to the same place, but a lot of times all 3 will take you different places. And the mapping that we had to do to get these things, I had to draw these weird diagrams that Vance had to try and interpret so that we could not have this go on infinitely, but that things would loop back to each other, and we would be able to still move the story ahead in the general direction we wanted. The students just had a lot of different paths to get there. So I'm going to switch back to my headset here.
Yeah. And Phil mentioned other programs at the time that were quite popular. I wonder, but another thing one thing that Phil wanted to raise in the last 15 minutes here, maybe we can broach this topic, and that is, well, Phil wrote an article which, let's see if I can find the name of that article. It's Interactive Participatory Dramas for Language Learning. It's a 2002 article he published in Simulation and Gaming. And I suppose you'd probably share that with somebody if they wrote you or something like that, but it's actually it's behind a paywall at the moment. You can read an abstract online.
Yeah, I have a pre-publication copy that I will distribute if somebody wants to see it, if you don't have access to Simulation and Gaming.
Yeah, sometimes, I don't know about you, Phil, but sometimes I put my pre-publication copies online, but I don't know if is that
I do if I know I'm allowed to, and sometimes the copyright doesn't say that that's allowed, and sometimes it's kind of vague. So
okay, well, anyway, yeah, anyhow, but so in any event, if you want it, you could ask Phil, and I'm sure he'd send you a copy. But in any event, so there's one game it's not speech recognition, but there's something called Trace Effects, which is a participatory drama. Actually, since Magdalena was shaping the way we were learning English, I'm sure Trace Effects must have come up in that MOOC. That was a MOOC shaping the way we teach English. Did you talk about? Did you do any participatory drama in that MOOC?
Not, in fact, we didn't. It was basically focused on real objects and how to incorporate them in your teaching. So, more of that.
Okay. Well, anyway, Trace Effects is a nice little program, but doesn't work on speech recognition, but it's similar, and you get it's more up to date in the sense that you have a Second Life kind of environment that you move a character through. The character walks as you press the forward key and moves around, and you can talk to people in the environment, but it's all in text. So anyway, and it also has a storyline that is sort of, well, for example, it gets into farmers markets and eating good food and things like that. So I suppose if you're, I know in our part of in the Arab world, sometimes that throws the Arab students a little bit, to culturally get their minds around that. But in any event, yeah. So I don't. Do you know? Do you use any other participatory dramas, other programs of this nature?
Actually, I took part in a very interesting course, which was a drama course for teachers of English. So I do this in real life, and at the moment I'm also teaching some young kids, age 4 to 13, some of them handicapped, but this is real life. They live in a village, so they do not have any access to computers and stuff, but they are sweet, and I hope one day we can also introduce computers, and they can also experience what you are doing and experience your program. It would be great. So I'm very interested in what you are doing, and I think drama is a fantastic way to teach English and to learn English.
Okay. I guess I could, well, first of all, I totally agree with you, Magdalena. I think drama is very underrated. What we also wanted to try to tap into, there were a number of games during the 1990s, and some still exist, although they've become much more elaborate than they used to be, where you would have to make decisions. Whether you were going to, talk to one character or talk to another character. These were all text-based, but they drove you along and made you not just someone who was either watching, as in a movie, or reading, as in a book. I guess all this goes back at some level to the choose-your-own-adventure books, even of the 1980s, where you would say, if you want to ask for help, go to page 37. If you want to, to kick this guy in the knee, then go to page 64. So it's a little bit of that same idea. The difference here is that every single conversational move is a juncture where you can, where you're making choices, and we think, and when the frustration wasn't too much from using the speech recognition, a lot of students would get engaged in this in ways that they would have found, well, they wouldn't have gotten engaged if they were listening to a kind of static dialogue and dramatization. Keep in mind, too, that this was very much an experiment, and future stories could have been written by people who were actually story writers rather than somebody like me who was just looking to have some fun, especially with Vance. That article that Vance mentioned, a couple of things that came up after the fact. So I wrote that in 2001. It got published in 2002. So about 4 years after this. After we finished Traci Talk and Vance moved on to greater things, I had another year or so with the company, and we had begun to develop a lower level version of a participatory drama. And in this one, this is based on pure marketing, where it's understood that the level of Traci Talk is too high for a lot of students, and so if you get something at a lower level, you have many more people you could sell it to. What we wanted to do was take what we'd learned from Traci Talk and make something that had better interactions. The storyline for this one was going to be you're in a tour group and you're at an airport, and right at the beginning you see people around you, the person holding the flag for the tour group, and then the screen slowly comes together and blacks out, and then it opens a couple of seconds later and everybody's gone. And so the assumption is you fell asleep, your tour group left you, and you're now stuck in the airport, and you have to do more of what is done in Trace Effects, which wasn't done in Traci Talk, which is move through an environment, make decisions about where to go. And the first thing you do is go to the airline ticket counter and find out that the last flight of the day has left for where you were going to go, and you're now stuck having to find food, to find a place to stay, to entertain yourself, to get a reservation for the flight the next day. So the sort of typical tourist stuff that gets done, only you have to do it now under this situation. And one of the things that I noted, I think I mentioned it in the early parts of this, is that when you're engaged with the material the way it is in Traci Talk, you see these lines on the screen, and basically you have to make a fairly quick decision which line to read. And there were some students who tended to read the first line at least the first time through, and that doesn't always work. The second problem is it becomes more of a listening and a reading exercise. They do speak the lines, and they sort of have to understand them, but it's a very superficial level of processing. So we came up with a couple of alternatives to that. In one of them, you would see the lines just like you do in Traci Talk, and then when you said you were ready to speak, they would disappear. And that meant you had to have picked one of them, internally rehearsed it a little bit, and then spoken it. And that would require more processing, and we think, increase the chances that whatever was going to be there would stick. Another option we played around with was to start with the full line and then reduce it to a couple of 2 or 3 keywords, so you still had something up there to help you remember, but you didn't have the full range, and so you were having to fill in gaps, basically. In Traci Talk, you had the option of turning the options off, but I have never seen a student do that. And in fact, even when I did it in demonstrating, I realized that unless I had actually deliberately remembered the line, I wouldn't be able to bring it back enough so that the speech recognizer would pick it up. I think, as Vance mentioned, this is still early stages. It is discrete speech recognition, and it's not listening for everything. It's listening to see if what you say matches one of those 2 or 3 options. And if it's not there, it just doesn't process it. It doesn't try and come up with a text of something else. These days, you could do that. You could take a fairly limited area and maybe just do a hotel interaction, because that's what we do when we go to banks online or we go to reservation systems online. Those are they might ask you some options, but most of the time they just say, what do you want? And the speech recognition for that has become much more sophisticated and also very forgiving of a range of accents. A lot of how that works is proprietary, but I suspect after they get a certain speech sample of your first few words, they try to figure out what accent you have, and then they tweak the recognition. So if you sound like you have a Spanish accent, then they're going to use a set of models from Spanish speakers of English to try to make it work. Obviously, that takes lots of money, and so we didn't do it. I don't think we could have even then. So some of the questions I had were, Traci Talk will, as far as I know, never be resurrected. It was designed for Windows 3.1 initially, and then put into Windows 95 as well. Finding a computer that it will even run on is difficult. I kept my old netbook, and it does still work in Microsoft XP. It won't work on Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, and it won't work with 64-bit, especially it won't work with 64-bit computers, and that's what most of them are these days. So that, coupled with the fact that somebody else actually owns the copyright, and I think, Vance, you actually found a link to where Traci Talk rights are?
Yeah, it's in the learning2gether.pbworks.com, and it will be archived. All those links get archived at learning2gether.net, which is where our archives live after the recording is made. When this stops, in a day or two, I put it up at learning2gether.net. There are a couple of programs that just came to mind while you were talking about these things, especially the airport scenario. I remember now that that was the last thing we were working on when I moved over to the UAE. And there's an interesting program, an interesting place in Second Life called languagelab.com. Are you familiar with it at all?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's still there, but they had an airport there. And they had other places too where you could go and buy coffee and interact with. The idea was to interact with other students there, I suppose. I don't know how many actually came, but I had because I was writing about it. They let me in and they let me move around and see people and talk to people there. So it was an interesting space in Second Life. Second Life, a place that you could have participatory drama. And another one that I've been using a little more lately is Minecraft. And Minecraft, again, it's a place like Second Life, except there's always a purpose to it. And the purpose in Minecraft is always to stay alive. There are two modes. There's creative and there's what they call challenge mode or something like that. I can't remember that. Does anybody remember the name of the mode in Second Life? Creative and survival mode. Now, the survival mode is especially interesting because basically the way we use it as teachers anyway is we have Jeff Kuhn, who's do you know Jeff? You know Jeff, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he's when he goes there, he builds shelters and he invites us in. He puts signs up on them, so we can usually stay alive because we can find Jeff's shelters. So if you so basically you're moving it forward spontaneously. It's kind of like improv, and if you relate it to drama, and it's very interesting to participate in this kind of thing. We're doing EVO, Electronic Village Online sessions, so that's another thing that reminded me of. I guess, well, that's three things: Second Life, Minecraft, and this languagelab.com in Minecraft. Halima has asked if she can speak, and of course,
Halima,
you
please
can unmute your mic, and you're welcome to talk and ask Phil a question. And okay, looks like she's about to do that.
Hi, Halima.
Hello, I have a question to Phil. If I understood correctly, we see here developers of this trace effect, yes?
No, Trace Effects, Traci Talk.
No.
It's a slightly different program. Yeah. Our
Different,
program. Yeah. This is.
What can I say? You know, people sitting in America, in California, in Silicon Valley, they produce, of course, 3D educational products. But here in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent, we have an extra group, a club at IT University, where English is a medium of instruction. They wear this Oculus Rift glasses to see 3D films. But I was in Moscow for almost 2 months, and at last I watched this Oculus Rift, Spielberg's movie about dinosaurs. I remember time it was published in Forum magazine about this film, how it was made, how all these pictures will be focused in one picture through these glasses. But now in Tashkent we have so kind of opportunity in extra movie club where the students can see. what can I say? Why it is not so difficult to see educational products, be familiar with products which are created in America? We have many things. First of all, be very good in English, see new products, get new 3D educational products, see. Unfortunately, I see not so many students and teachers here. Maybe at the beginning of the year, in September, we can repeat this about this Traci, because all people in Uzbekistan love this Traci, but they cannot work with them like with teaching and learning aids. I think that this Traci can be a good teaching and learning aids. Therefore, maybe to repeat this class, or I can explain if I understand all things correctly here. I love this Traci effect, and I was embarrassed, even so impressed in Moscow, seeing this Spielberg's, this, it will Jurassic Park call it, yes? Like this, about dinosaurs. I would like to tell my students and my colleagues about that, about if you are ready to repeat your class, Mr. Phil, you get opportunity to speak to almost 100,000 people, English teachers.
Halima, the problem is I'm not part of the Trace Effects team.
Okay.
And so this is Traci Talk, and this was from the 1990s. It's a very old program. Vance, have you had the Trace Effects group on, I think?
Yes, I saw how demonstrated the speak between you and machine, this robot. It is very interesting. But our teacher must see that, okay? If you are ready to repeat the class, Vance, I am so happy to be among the attendees today. I understand something.
Okay, and also you mentioned Oculus Rift, which is a very interesting. You know, we're talking. Actually, we started talking about Traci Talk, which is what Phil and I developed. Then we talked about participatory drama, other kinds of similar programs, and bringing it up to date. And your mention of Oculus Rift is very interesting because that's also a tool that would really lend itself to this kind of environment, and we're seeing those at conferences. ISTE is full of Minecraft and Oculus Rift in Philadelphia. Just this last year.
I try to understand, because it will be soon the opening on new academic year, and I'm invited to this club of young ICT minds who also uses this Oculus Rift 3D product. Maybe I will I will rewatch the recording of this class, and maybe we'll discuss, because it's very, very difficult to get good colleagues, students to discuss like you are discussing here. You know, developing countries. If English is good, technology is bad. If you have all things, you are missing this trace effect games. Also, we try to do the best, of course. Thank you, Mr. Peel, for your
You're welcome.
For me. Vance, thank you for inviting me to your class. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and also if you're using Oculus Rift, you might consider joining us and telling us about it, what you're doing with it. So we're up at the top of the yes.
It is called, or it is the name, the price of Oculus Rift is only $350 in Silicon Valley. My grandson will bring me.
Oh, okay, good, excellent, Olivia. Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
So maybe we should consider wrapping up, because we don't want to extend people's, be discourteous to our presenters and our audience and all that. But anyhow, this has been a very interesting discussion for Phil and I. It's great to talk about what was really the high point of our careers, I suppose. So, any final thoughts? Any questions? Other questions you'd like to ask?
What about Second Life? You mentioned a Second Life. Could you tell something for us? I know this, her name is Heike Philip from Europe. She's created for Second Life. She invited me. but it's so expensive to be in that program about Second Life. Very, very expensive. I don't know why.
Oh, maybe.
First of all, we must download this viewer with like Palm, yes? Second Life,
it's
downloading
free.
this device, yes, free, yes. Then, but it is not easy to navigate, not easy to use this program. I like to understand something about Second Life, but it's not so easy.
Yeah,
Okay.
and when things are difficult, that's when you need a network, and so that's actually enhances communication among language learners to figure out something that's difficult, or also teachers, and teachers learn how social networking works in this case. So that's really my interest in
Okay, thank you.
about the environment.
Could you say me, Phil, you are from America, from United States, yes?
Yes.
And Mrs. Magdalena is from America too?
No, I'm from Poland.
О, Poland. Здравствуйте, привет, как дела?
Привет. Очень хорошо. И у вас?
Vance, да, хорошо, спасибо. Vance, I need someone be very cute in ICT from Brazilian. We have an extra project for BRICS countries.
Ah.
Yes.
Well, that would be Carla Arena.
Arena? She's from Brazil, yes? Yes, she's
Yes, from
beautiful.
Brasilia.
Yes, she's from, okay, Arena is beautiful, yes. Good, thank you.
Okay.
But this lady, she's the same age like me. Teresa. Teresa, she's
Yes,
from
Teresa in
Portugal,
Portugal.
yes?
I think I'm going to end the broadcast if you don't mind, and if you want to stay on and talk a little bit about these other projects, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight, for Learning Together, the Learning Together event. This is the...
Okay.
Screen appears to be frozen, but I hear sound and things are coming back. Okay, so anyway, we've been talking about Traci Talk, a program that Phil and I worked on back 20 years ago. Have I got that right? Something
Close,
like that.
yeah. We first started talking about it in '95, so that's 20 years.
Yeah, I was living in California, and Phil has always been there. And so anyway, and Sherry, who was here earlier, asked us to come and talk about this. So we did, and so we thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you for a future Learning Together event, we hope. So thanks. Thanks, Phil, for coming along. Thanks, Magdalena, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And Robert Walkman for putting us in touch. And Halima from Tashkent. And Sherry from
thank you.
Los Angeles. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.